Okay, guys, welcome to my podcast. What I'm going to do is today I'm going to do an article review, basically, and I'm going to be speaking about China's role in the Asian economic unification process. This is written by Chao Cheng in 2005, and actually, this article was published in the Economic and Political Weekly. Volume number 40, section 36, I suppose, because I think China's role here is very important, and I think India's role is also very important, and many of the Asian actors, Southeast Asian, East Asian actors as well. But, I'm going to do a review on this article, and I think it might shine some light on you as well, and it has definitely shined a light on me as well. I feel like maybe we should definitely delve into it and, we can start a conversation on it, okay? So the argument or the thesis of this article by the author, Mr. Cheng, it points out that he argues that China's participation in the process will enhance the country's political and democratic reform and help China becoming a solid peer in building a secure foundation for peace in Asia and the world, unquote. So, as we see with the rise of China as a regional economic hub power, okay, so it is the powerhouse, and its positive engagement in today's globalization process. As we see today, I've already discussed with you about the globalization process and how it's going about. We're living in a very globalized village, per se, and everything is evolving. And also, I think the whole pandemic, as we see today, and also as we have seen in the past, for example, the SARS, okay, and also the H1, the swine flu, and we have the Spanish flu, and the Black Death. If you go back in all this history, what we found, particularly, in correlation to some of the, very similar things, is that every certain time period, we do have some kind of a crisis, and this affects every country economically as well. And I think it is good to delve into it when people have already experienced these kind of past events, per se. So it has certainly shaped the world, okay, and also the rise of China has shaped the world as well as we speak right now. China has also very actively participated in many efforts towards regional cooperation in Asia and abroad, as we see in Africa, in Middle East, in Europe. There's a thing called Belt and Road Initiative, which a lot of people know about it, but if you haven't, you can Google it. And you can actually YouTube it as well. Some of the very, interesting infrastructure projects and financial loans, and some of the cultural initiative that has been implemented by, I guess President Xi. Okay, but actually goes back to the Chinese reform. Actually, if you really have to go back in history. So Asia's regional economic cooperation in Asia is developing very fast, also with the association of, ASEAN. Okay, guys, I don't know if you've heard of ASEAN. The abbreviation of ASEAN is Southeast Asian Nation, ASEAN. Okay, coupled with the positive contributions of major Asian nations such as China, India, and Japan. Okay, progress in cooperation shows that Asian economic unification has already started. So guys, what I'm going to point out here is that we're trying to speak on a level of a world economy, particularly on the Asian economy, okay? Why I say world? Because it's all tied. And what this author is trying to bring about is a common unified currency, okay, or a common unified Asian currency. And let's go into a little bit of historical analysis before we start in this topic here. So in the early 2000s, okay, so I would say that's about 2 decades approximately. So we're in 2020, so 2 decades, okay. Asian region was experiencing 7% growth, okay, 7% growth, which laid the foundation for Pan-Asian regional cooperation, okay. Okay, so some of the historical analysis that I've done on this article is number one, in the early 2000s, okay, China and ASEAN signed the FTA agreement. So guys, it's an agreement. It's called a free trade agreement. This is kind of like a very important aspect. Okay, on November 2002. Okay, to establish the free trade zone by 2010. Okay, guys. Also, this free trade zone comprised of 10 ASEAN countries and China. So guys, if you haven't noticed, I will be talking to you about ASEAN plus 1, ASEAN plus 2, ASEAN plus 3, and so on and so forth. So ASEAN plus 1 means, so that's 10 Asian countries plus one China country. The third largest in the world, which is 1.7 billion. So this is during like 2005. So this article was written during 2005, guys. So if you don't realize, I'm kind of going back in that time period because I'm doing an analysis on the article. So basically, it has a trade volume of 1.2 trillion, okay, usually, approximately about 1.2 trillion during 2005. So we're talking annually, okay, which was next to NAFTA and EU. So that was really big that time, you see. So number two, on October 7th, 2003, China, Japan, Korea, and ASEAN, okay, agreed on FTA, free trade agreement, by 2020. So they already had a plan on 2020 that the ASEAN three, who's three, China, Japan, and Korea, plus the ASEAN, right? So we have the ASEAN three. They actually already called it. They said we're gonna sign this free trade agreement, and by 2020, it's going to be full on. So I guess this is happening. If I've not done my research, if my research is not right, please correct me. But I think the ASEAN tree is ongoing right now. So number three, on September 2003, okay, an FTA agreement plan, which was about approximately 2.5 billion people, traders, consumers, which comprise of the 75% total of Asia, okay, has been reached by the ASEAN, China, Japan, and India at Jakarta, Indonesia, okay. So we're talking about now India, okay, we're talking about China, India, Japan, okay, and the other ASEAN countries, okay. So this agreement was implemented between 2012 and 2017, okay. So they kind of said, okay, we're going to do this agreement, and this will eventually evolve into the ASEAN 4, okay. So basically, we are talking about ASEAN, we're talking about ASEAN 3, now we're talking about ASEAN 4. I'm pretty sure there was ASEAN 2 in the discussion as well, but I'm not going to go very much into it. So number 4 is the Bangkok Agreement. So this was a regional trade agreement in Asia, okay, that includes 6 countries, guys. So we're talking about 6 now, okay. 3 from East Asia and 3 from South Asia, okay. So who are talking about the 3 in Asia? East Asia, China, Korea, and Laos, okay. The other 3 is India, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. So these kind of like the 3 Asian giants, they're forming an alliance, okay, economic alliance, and they're trading and they're linking trade routes vis-a-vis, the whole Bangkok Agreement. So I think this is a very important evolution of this economic unification in Asia as we speak. So number 5, in 2003, the annual meeting in Bow Wow Forum. I hope I said it right, okay, guys. So it's spelled BAAO. Okay, it's also called the Davos of Asia. Okay, so the Asian Davos, which usually takes in, I think it's in Switzerland or somewhere, where they come together, different countries from Europe and all that stuff, and talk about the economy and stuff. But anyways, it's the Forum of Asia, okay, BFA. So Fidel Ramos, who was the previous president of Philippines, okay, so he came about and he said, we're going to build this, Grand Asian family, okay, or also called as Grand Asian family, okay. It's literally, that's what he said. He said, we're going to form this link of trade cooperation where we will trade between Asian nations. So he kind of presented that. And, I think during the Asian Davos, I think there was even the Prime Minister of Australia, I think. And I believe definitely, Ramos was there as well. Yeah, I suppose his name is Ramos, I think. Yeah, Fidel Ramos from the Philippines. And I think the previous Prime Minister of Japan was also there. But nevertheless, this evolution of unification of, Asian economy was going on that time. So I think this is a very important aspect. So now, number 6, okay? Number 6, we're talking about April 2002 right now. So there is a very famous Nobel laureate economist, Robert A. Mundell. Okay, so he was a Nobel Prize winner. He predicted that Asia would have a single currency in the near future. Okay, so he was doing a kind of like a lecture in South China. I think it was in Sun Yat-sen University in Guangzhou. And he kind of predicted that there was going to be a single currency, which I'll be talking to you about, okay? So guys, the future prospects of the unification of, what the Asian economy is going to be, as we have seen in NAFTA, as we have seen the EU, I think the rise of Asia and the new dawn of Asia, it definitely has a narrative here. And that's why I want to actually bring this up in this discussion here. And, hopefully we will definitely speak about some of the prospects and some of the takeaway points as well. And please feel free to comment, and, hopefully we can discuss, and, you can email me as well, okay? So guys, I'm just going to delve in here. We can see clearly that the proponents of Asian unification, made by many Asian leaders, as we have spoken already, okay, the Asians, the Asian Davos, the Philippines leader, the Japanese Prime Minister, and so on and so forth, have put forward this, cooperation of this Asian economy, okay, already. Even the United Nations Charter, Chapter 8, okay, if you look up and Google United Nations Charter, Chapter 8, you will definitely see something on, promoting regional and social economic cooperation, coupled with United Nations Economic and Social Commissions for Asia and the Pacific. It's called ESCAP, okay. So basically, all these institutions, all these actors, they proposed a kind of like a new dawn where, Asia will eventually rise, and we will get into this, economic cooperation and integration within the region. And they even set up laws on that. And even the United Nations definitely is a very big proponent on that. So I think they were not, they just didn't do it, but they were very wise on it. And I think it was a success, I would say. All right, because if you look at what Asia has been doing for the past couple of decades, I think it's a story that needs to be told. Okay, and I think let me just delve into it here. despite the fact that Asia is a very large and complex with so many diverse cultures, we have different political systems, right? We have different economic strengths, different economic systems as well. We have religious diversity as well. We have a lot of Taoism, Buddhism. We have, in India we have Hinduism as well. And we have, what's that? We have Christianity as well, and we have Parsis, we have Jews, we have all sorts of religion here. Unlike the West, which is predominantly Catholics, okay, and Christians, okay, and some Jews as well. But nevertheless, they came about from, from Russia and from Europe and from Israel as well during Hitler's woes, I would say. But despite the fact, I think Asia is definitely a very diverse, continent, and we have to look into all these aspects. And I'm pretty sure leaders during that time have taken a very strong stance on how to go about curb this, differences and actually accept the differences, But anyways, so I think the rise of China. Okay, so I'm going to speak a little bit of the rise of China because if I haven't spoken about the rise of China, I think it would be inevitable for me, to not to talk about the Asian economy, because Asian economy definitely rests upon the pioneers of the rise of the economic giants per se, and China is number one. And India is catching up as well, and many other countries. I would say Japan was also number one. Japan was very much ahead of time as well when it came to the economy. But anyway, I'll speak a little bit about the rise of China, and maybe next time I'll delve into Japan and other states, nation states. Okay. So, how do we know where China had gone into, and how China had traversed into this very, a jungle of, no prospects to, a greater good in finances and economy. So we see that China is opening up and reform, okay, since 1978, okay, which have paved the way, okay, to a robust economy. I've already spoken to you, okay, around the world, okay. Angus Madison's book, okay, so here's a book written by Angus Madison. It's called Reviewing the World for 200 Years, points out that, okay, so it's called Reviewing the World for 200 Years, okay. So if you guys are interested in, the Asian economy and how economy has been going about in the world, you definitely have to read Angus Madison's book, okay. So he points out that, I quote, in 1820, China's GDP was the highest, okay, followed by India, France, and UK, all right. However, okay, so the unquote, okay, but so Cheng says, however, due to unfortunate, well-known historical reasons, as we all know, China went through a lot of warfare, particularly the Opium Warfare, which was predominantly, implemented by the West, and particularly the British as well. So due to unfortunate, well-known historical reasons, China lagged behind the following centuries, as we all know, okay. The US took world position as per GDP only during 1895 when China lost Taiwan in the Jiawu War with Japan, okay. So guys, during, what are we now? During 1820, okay, China's GDP was the highest. Okay, that's amazing, okay. But, due to, historical reasons, it went down, okay. But it went back up again. Okay, so we need to talk about that. So when it went up, we have Western hegemons, we have Western powers, we have wars during that time, and intervention and political maneuvering, and all sorts of opening up nasty Pandora's box. We do have a thing called China's threat, because a lot of people would say, particularly people who don't like the rise of Asia would say, okay, and well, we have neighbors as well who are not so happy about the rise of China. So it is a Chinese threat. But I'm going to point out something here. We have trade wars, China versus USA. Okay, we have Trump's racist rhetoric against the Chinese, which pretty much, for me, I was in America when I was studying my bachelor's degree, and I can relate to what a lot of Asian Americans are going through. Everybody says, Chinese is just another country, but if you look at the racial, perspective, people who look like Asians would consider Chinese to a lot of Europeans. So, yeah, it's a very worrisome time right now, especially with the pandemic and calling it a Chinese virus. But I don't want to talk too much about it. I'll just move on here, okay? Okay, the only military expansion that China did, okay, was during the Yuan dynasty, which was during 1206 to 1259 AD. So basically, it wasn't even actually Chinese emperors. It was actually a Mongolian, heroes during that time who came about, conquered China. It was under the Kublai Khan's, dictatorship, or well, I guess he was emperor, and he conquered and expanded most of the kingdoms outside. So, yeah, not necessarily someone from China, but someone from outside. But also, if you look at the Ming Dynasty, okay, which was during 1405 to 1433 AD, Zhang He, okay, or you would say Zheng He, okay. He was a diplomat. He was an envoy for China, and also a government official who took his boats and took his armada, and he went to Southeast Asia and many parts of the world to trade, to exchange gifts and culture of Chinese culture. So they didn't necessarily colonize, but instead they, colonize or loot and plunder like the Europeans or the British did. But they were very peaceful in that way. So yeah, I would think, is the China threat real? But anyways, that's for you to think, right? Now we have, in the recent times we have the China and the India war, okay, the Sino-Indian War, okay, or the India-Sino War, whatever you call it. So we have a question from somebody. His name is Fly. Sir, where are you from? Sir, I'm from the northeast region of India, okay, particularly in Nagaland. But yes, thank you for your question, okay. Yes, I speak to a lot of Indian audience as well. So guys, I have my YouTube audience, and I also have my Indian audience, which is here in Bigo app. So yeah, welcome guys, I appreciate it. Okay, so we're talking about the India-China, war, but Chang says it was usually ideological differences that took place. I know, well, maybe he's true as well, but I know for a fact that it was, territorial problems as well, which took place out there. But I think so that's for some other time to debate. But despite the differences, okay, in 1954, before all this happened, what happened in China and India? During 1954, China and India proposed 5 principles of peaceful coexistence. I mean, if you really have to look about all this, positive sides, I think we can definitely get along. And I think economy is also something that we can all get into a whole kumbaya mode. And everybody wins here. Okay, so what is the takeaway points here? I'll be very brief here. Number 1, okay, I spoke to you about ASEAN +1 and ASEAN +3. Okay, so we're talking about ASEAN, that's 10 countries plus China, and ASEAN, the other 3 countries, okay, which is the East Asia. These free trade zone plans reflects the deepening interdependence among the economies of East Asia, which has been thriving. In 2003, okay, and I'll tell you why it has been thriving. Okay, in 2003, the internal trade volume in East Asia had been much higher than those with the U.S. Okay, so guys, it was the U.S. and it was the West before, which was actually dominating the Asian economy as well, because it was pegged to the dollar. Okay, uh, huge favorable balances were achieved by the ASEAN, Japan, and Korea in their trade with China. Okay, so we're talking about the now. Let's talk about the Sino-Japanese trade. Okay, so Chinese and Japanese trade. Okay, its volume reached to $133.58 billion. Okay, so $133.58 billion with an annual growth of 31.1% in 2003. Okay, so by the way, if you have that kind of so much trade going on, it's inevitable. Okay, that Japan was the highest trading partner of China, even like back then. We're talking about 2003, right? I think it's 2003. Yes, 2003. So one thing we can do here is, as an Asian diaspora or people from the Asian continent here, what we can do is we can learn from Europe, okay, how Europe have sealed the deal with Japan, okay. They have good ties. Japan has, and we can learn a lot from Japan as well. But nevertheless, I think there needs to be some kind of a diplomacy here as well when we speak about the unification of Asian economy here, okay? And trying to build a currency for all of us so that there is no intervention or there is no threat from the other parties, okay, or from the other blocs per se. Okay, so Sino-India. Okay, so the Sino-India bilateral trade have been progressing very swiftly. Okay, as we speak. When I was talking to you about the Japan trade, even India trade was going on very swiftly with China and China and India. So it climbed from virtually nothing, okay, to 10 billion in 2003. How about that? Okay, before 2003. China and India didn't trade much, okay, but by 2003 it was only 10. It was already 10 billion. So, talk about building allies and talk about building cooperation. I think this is the way to go. And I actually want to point this out here. One of the things that we can learn also is India and China. We are kind of the victims of guys. So I'm from India as well. Okay, I don't look Indian, but I try to be the moderator here, or the diplomat, or the messenger per se. What happened here? Okay, so the China country and India country, China and India, we have a very long colonial past by the Europeans and the British and the West. Okay. What we can do is we can come together, and despite our differences, okay, there's a lot of divide and conquer. There's a lot of, intervention, and there's a lot of politically, there's a lot of political maneuvering. I would say from the other parties, and our far neighbors as well, very far neighbors. Okay. So I think what we need to do is, this is a very important thing, that China and India needs to get our acts together and try to learn from history that this whole colonial mindset and the medicine that has been put into our our system should be erased and should be forgotten, and we should start joining hands together. Okay, that's just my request here. And I know there's a lot of debates, but please keep that in the comments. We can always write it down, and maybe we can discuss it later. Okay. So number 5. Okay, I'm talking about now the UN Security Council. China is the only permanent member of the Security Council from Asia. So I think China could be the moderator. Okay, because it has a lot of power here. Why? Because with the growing economic power, okay, China has a stronger regional and global influence, okay, and it is also very actively participating in the political, international political, arena here. So what we can learn here is, when we see China playing this Asian Security Council member here, it's almost like is protecting, it's actually protecting Asian interest and contributing to the world peace and justice, if you really think about it. Okay. Despite the fact that other, nations would argue that it is like a communist evil who is going to destroy the world, but no, it's these are propaganda tools which is highly highly mixed with a lot of potent unwanted things. Okay, so I think these kind of narrative needs to be filtered out, and I think we should be wise enough as well and knowledgeable enough to kind of understand what is good and bad here, and what is good for us and what is not good for us, as in the interest of Asia per se. All right, so what are the necessary ingredients for Asian economic unification? Okay, number one, we need to have larger economic scale per se, which is true. We already have in China, but I think all the Asian countries needs to kind of build this up as well. So number two, we need open markets here. Okay. Number three, we have freely convertible currency. Okay. I already said a lot of authors, a lot of economic, experts and leaders have kind of proposed that by going back to their era, well, it would be about 30 years. They said in 30 years' time, there's going to be one currency in Asia, just like the EU. Okay, so keep that in mind. I think this is very important here. And number four, there needs to be ample amount of capital reserves for overseas investments, as we can see what China is doing and what other nations are doing in Asia as well. Okay, particularly, well, we have the Belt and Road Initiative, and we have a lot of investment in the Middle East and Africa, I would say, by the the Chinese government, and also the Indian government as well. Definitely have a lot of investment in other parts of the country as well. So, which is good. You need to expand your horizons. So the last one is an international cultural, social, and political standard. Why I say this is because I've already spoken to you that Asia is a very diverse country. A continent. Okay, I always say nation state. Sorry, because I speak a lot about the nation state. I like that topic. But anyways, why I say international cultural, social, and political standard is because we are racially different in many parts. We are also, culturally different. We are religiously different, and we eat different. We write different. We speak different in many countries. So, I think we need to have an international standard which will kind of appease to every member states out here. So. Anyways, I want to cut this short here, okay? One philosopher said, okay, so this is according to Cheng, only when you have changed yourself, you can change others, okay? The largest impact of a rising China on Asia and the world shall finally lie in the outcomes of the country's internal reform. So guys, so like I said, nation state or countries needs to figure out, okay, how to get into this, Asian economy. And, I've already pointed out about the historical and, some of the pointers that needs to go about into our minds. And I think, maybe we can, definitely come up with better solutions. But I think this is a very good author. Maybe next time I'll speak about another article. If you are interested in sending me a couple of articles or topics, please feel free to send in the message or comment down below, and I'll be the happiest person to actually go through it and do a review on it. But anyways, well, this is my podcast number 15. Please subscribe, and I hope you will join me next time. Okay? All right. God bless you all. Bye-bye.